A Gathering of Gargoyles by Meredith Ann Pierce. 15. Sibyl. Ariel whirled, but no one stood before the temple. She saw now that the entryway was a natural opening in the rocks, devoid of doors. A weird, wordless crooning began, very soft. "Sibyl," she said. No answer came. The contents of the offering bowl shifted, smoking. The stone lioness lay motionless, facing the sun. Handling the ambergris had left Ariel's hand waxy. She rubbed the sweet-smelling stuff off on one arm. The singing continued. Ariel went inside. The interior of the cave was no bigger than a chamber. The light of Soul Star streamed in from the door. On the far side of the room lay a slab of stone, dark like obsidian and smooth. A faint hum seemed to come from it, and a slight bitter scent. Before it lay a small fire pit, beside which a woman in sackcloth sat, spinning. Her great spindle was dark iron. Her drab wool came from beaten nettles. The woman's face was turned from the sunlight, and it was she who murmured the wordless tune. "Are you the Sibyl?" said Ariel. The woman lifted her head. Her face was lined. She wore no veil, only a bandage across her eyes. "What? Is someone there?" Her voice was soft, like paper on sand. The glow of the coals played across her features strangely. Ariel knelt. "Sibyl," she said, "I need your help. I have come from Isternus to lay a riddle before you. My name is Ariel." "Ariel," the old woman whispered. Her hair was unkempt, her fingers stained with nettle juice. "Ariel, that was my fellow in the syndic's house." Her thin, calloused hands groped through the air. Ariel started violently, recognizing the other now. She remembered her years in the syndic's house in the company of a madwoman of Avaric who told horrific tales of once pushing her sovereign's son into a desert lake as tribute for a Lorelei. "Durna," Ariel breathed. Leathery hands darted over her face. "It is you," the blind woman cried. "My little Ariel. But what are you doing here, my love? We all heard you had run away, a long time ago." Ariel nodded. "Yes, I went back to the steeps, where Iodowin was taken. The Dark Angel returned and carried me away. But what are you doing here? I must speak to the Sibyl. "Oh, I never treated you kindly," Durna moaned. "But I meant no harm. I was a spiteful one. But I serve the temple now. I had to run away like you." Her spidery fingers left Ariel's face. "The syndic was in a rage when he discovered you gone. Said someone must have helped you." "No one helped me," answered Ariel. "Was it you who spoke to me outside?" Durna's fingers fluttered. "Did I?" She shook her head, frowning. "I can't recall." Her bandaged eyes seemed to seek Ariel's. "You know how I forget sometimes." "Is the Sibyl here?" Ariel asked. Again the other shook her head. "Not here, but wait," clutching Ariel's wrist as the girl made to rise. "She will return. Stay with me a little while." Ariel leaned her staff in one corner of the dark stone slab. It was nearly black, but had the look, somehow, of being clear, as though if only she looked long enough she might be able to see deep down, as into a well. Still it hummed, almost below her hearing, and the odor that came from it was faintly like tar or lightning flash. Ariel sat down again. Durna sat winding her wool about her spool. "What is that bandage?" Ariel asked. Durna touched the gauze. "The light from Soul Star hurts my eyes," she muttered. "For all that I am blind." Ariel gazed about the room. There was nothing to see, not even a bed. The cave was bare. Durna's hand brushed a stray nettle. She began twisting it. "But list, I remember now. There was a thing I wanted to tell you. Poor Bomba." "What of Bomba?" said Ariel, looking up. The other laid her spindle aside. "Are you not hungry, my dear?" she asked dreamily. "It is a long climb up that slope." Her fingers darting above the fire pit, she found a dipper and a cup. A low pan of something lay simmering there. She ladled some and pressed it to Ariel. The stuff tasted of vinegar, berries, and barley meal. Ariel set it aside, barely touched. "I am not hungry," she said. "Tell me of Bomba. Is she ill?" "Not hungry," Durna crooned. After such a climb, come, drink. You will swoon if you do not heed something. But what was I speaking of? Ariel sighed, sipped from the cup. She toyed with a pebble upon the floor. The hand of the woman across from her darted blindly, searching for something. Dirna was mad, had been mad as long as Ariel had known her. She sighed again. Pressing her would do no good. Oh, yes, the other cried, clutching a handful of dust. She laughed brittily. I have remembered now. Of Bamba. I was speaking of Bamba, your old nurse, Theodowin's nurse. She is dead. What? Cried Ariel. She had drunk most of the cup by then. Setting it down, she spilled the rest. The syndic killed her, the blind woman said. After you ran away, he said if anyone knew where you had gone, it would be she. I told no one I was going, cried Ariel. No one knew. Quickly, deftly, Dirna unwound the coarse wool from her spindle onto a shuttle. A hand loom rested on the floor beside her. She turned to it and began to weave. He shut her up in an empty storeroom. Dirna's fingers darted, passing the shuttle through the warp by touch. The great coarse square of cloth was nearly done. Said he'd not let her out till she told where you were. Ariel felt a weakness welling up in her. Her head swam. I don't understand, she murmured. If he fed her, how... Dirna made a sound that might have been whimpering. Ariel could not see her clearly any more. Well, he forgot to give her any water, didn't he? Dirna hissed. She clicked her tongue. Bamba was an ample old thing. Could have lived a day-month without a crumb, but not without water. Solstar was barely halfway to Zenith when she died. Oh, such a pity that. He hadn't meant to kill her. She'd been his own nurse before she was Eowyn's. Ariel felt dizzy suddenly and very cold. She shivered hard. Her teeth rattled. Dirna lifted her head. Are you cold? She asked. There, poor thing, put this on. It's finished now. I've been weaving it for day-months since I came here. Ariel looked up. Her head felt heavy. Her vision blurred. She saw Dirna lifting the cloth from the loom. She wrapped it tightly about Ariel's shoulders. The cloth had a rough and tacky feel. It seemed almost to adhere to her. Ariel made to weakly brush it away. What? The other murmured. Would you refuse old Dirna's shawl? I made it for you. Ariel struggled to rise, but her legs would not hold her. She fell heavily against Dirna. The blind woman was wrapping the shawl once more closely about her. Are you weary? She said. Come, I have a place for you to lie. Ariel felt herself half lifted, half dragged, and then a strange cold touch along her back. The surface beneath her shifted in tremors. A dull humming rose in her ears. Dirna had laid her upon the slab, she realized dimly. Trying to struggle to move, Dirna was bending over her. What have you done to me? Ariel whispered. She could hardly stir. The shawl gripped her tightly, as if it had been sewn to her. The drink, the other called. They call it stone's blood. To quiet you, you will sleep. The Sibyls drink it to bring them dreams. I must see the Sibyl, Ariel gasped. Little fool, there is no Sibyl here. I killed her and gave her to the stone. Few ever kill me here, and the Sibyl always went veiled. Who would know me from her? Lie still. Ariel struggled. The stone on which she lay felt hard at the same time slippery. Its hum, the tremor in it, seemed to be growing stronger. Her hair clung to its surface, as did her desert shift, and the fabric of Haddon's robe. Bamba, too, Dirna was muttering. Doddering old you. How I hated her. I was the one who was to bring her water. Fiend, panted Ariel. Harridan, why? The shawl about her shoulders clutched her till she choked. Dirna turned away. Kept you all away from me, didn't she? Called me mad, and you were always her pet. Fussed over you like a hen from the time you were such a little chit. The only word you could cry was Errol, Errol, some foreign word. Would not let Eowyn call you Sissa. Said you must have a better name. Then nothing would do but to call you Ariel. Ariel, what manner of name is that? Oh, stop struggling, it won't do you any good. That's the feasting stone you lie upon. Ariel stopped, staring after the woman with the bandaged eyes. "Yes," said Dirna. Her lean, weathered face cracked into a smile. "The feasting stone. The ancients made it. Who knows what they used it for?" She came back, leaning over Ariel. "The Sibyl is dead, but the stone still feasts. Offerings laid upon it fall into dust, which, after a little time, runs through the pores of the rock and disappears. As you will crumble and disappear, my love, soon, and I will watch." Then the sightless woman reached one leathery hand and pulled the bandage from her eyes. Her eyes were red, the color of carbuncles. They were smooth as glass, without iris or pupil or white. Dirna stood blinking in the light of Solstar. Ariel stared. In the desert of Pandar, the White Witch's jackals had had such eyes. You are one of the Lorelei's creatures?" she whispered. Dirna nodded. "Yes, my love, my pretty eyes. The White Lady's servant came to me a year after you ran away and brought me eyes. He said she had never forgotten me, how I had given her the princeling in the desert years ago." Her red eyes glimmered in the light. They looked as though they were lit within. Dirna clasped her hands, worried them, giggled with delight. "Her bride, she called me. Her joy. I must serve her again," she said. "All I need do for these pretty eyes was go to Orm and wait for you. You would be coming," she said. "You would have gargoyles." She leaned nearer. "Gargoyles," she said. "Where have you hidden them? You must have 5 of them by now, but you see, the 6th is already in my keeping." She turned and Ariel saw a crevasse in the wall. The light of Solstar threw it in shadow. She had not noticed it before. Ariel could scarcely turn her head. Her hair was fastened to the rock. The stones humming murmured in her ears. Dirna drew a chain from beneath her kirtle, and on it hung a silver pipe. She put the whistle to her lips and blew a blast so wild and shrill Ariel could scarcely hear it, though it made her head throb. From beyond the crack she heard a wail. "Come out," the red woman cried. "Come, you horror, or I'll blow a blast to split your ears." She raised the pipe again, and Ariel flinched, hearing another shriek from beyond the crack. Then through it crawled a creature, gray as stone, so crippled and bony Ariel could hardly tell it was shaped like a gray falcon before, some form of beast behind. "Raptor," Ariel whispered. "Gargoyle, raptor." The creature hooted at the sight of her, stared toward her, then glowered, gibbering, as Dirna blocked its path. "The Sibyl had it," the red-eyed woman said. "She had been feeding it, but the whistle makes it wild. It must obey. The White Lady sent it to me to help with its fellows, as well as the spindle to make your shawl." She eyed the gargoyle, clicked her tongue. "Poor beast, it's gotten very thin. The last it had to eat was the Sibyl's heart." Ariel tried to move, to scream, but she had no strength to move, no breath to scream. Something thin and thready was running out of her into the stone. "Where are its fellows?" Dirna demanded. "The lady wants them." The gargoyle in the corner yammered and screeched. Hissing, the red-eyed woman turned and seized it by the collar. The silver pin that fastened the brass band gleamed there. Dirna shook it. The raptor writhed, snarling, flexing its talons, but did not strike. "Don't you dare," Dirna laughed. "I have the pipe." Ariel struggled, fought to rise. Her garments held her to the stone, but the shawl about her had slipped a trace, and she found she could breathe. The arm on which she had rubbed the ambergris was sliding free, for the fabric did not adhere to it. Her skin on that arm did not bind to the stone. And there we will pause.